She looked at me like nothing had changed. I looked back knowing everything had. BB-17 The narrator is moving through a familiar part of town in the early evening, the kind of hour where the day hasn't fully let go yet. The light is warm but thinning, stretching long shadows across the pavement. He steps into a small cafe, nothing special, just a place he's passed 100 times. Drawn in by routine more than intention. The space smells faintly of coffee and baked bread, soft music humming low enough to be ignored. Then he sees her. She's seated near the window, posture relaxed. One leg crossed over the other in an unhurried way that suggests comfort with herself. Time has changed her, but gently. There's a quiet confidence in how she holds her shoulders now, a calm in her face that wasn't always there. Her hair catches the light as she tilts her head, listening to someone across from her, smiling in that familiar, unforced way. It hits him not all at once, but in layers, recognition, surprise, and then something deeper that settles in his chest before he can stop it. For a moment, he considers turning around. Not out of fear, but out of respect for the life he's built since. He's learned what distance can do, how it can protect as much as it can ache. But she looks up just then, as if sensing him before seeing him. Their eyes meet. The moment stretches, suspended. Her smile falters into something softer, more private. Not joy, not shock, just recognition. He walks over. Their greeting is careful, almost formal at first. Names exchanged unnecessarily. A quiet laugh at the coincidence. When they stand to hug, it's instinctive and restrained. Her arms wrap around him lightly, her hand resting between his shoulder blades. He feels the warmth of her through her coat, steady and grounding. The hug lasts a heartbeat longer than polite, then they pull apart without comment. Up close, he notices details he'd forgotten. The subtle lines at the corners of her eyes when she smiles. The way her voice carries calm even when she's surprised. She looks at him fully, not scanning or rushing, as if the rest of the room has faded. They decide to sit together, not because either suggests it outright, but because neither moves to leave. Conversation begins safely where they've been, what they're doing now. He keeps his tone even, observant. He notices how she listens, how she leans in slightly when he speaks, how her hands rest loosely in her lap, relaxed but attentive. The closeness feels familiar in a way that unsettles him. Not sharp, not painful, but present. There's no mention of the past yet. No tension spoken aloud. But it's there, humming beneath every word, in every pause. And as he sits across from her, he realizes something important, something that will guide everything that follows. Seeing her again doesn't reopen the wound. It reminds him that it once existed and that he survived it. The conversation continues easily, almost deceptively so. On the surface, it's nothing more than polite catching up. Work schedules, familiar places that have changed names, people they both know only distantly now. Yet beneath every ordinary sentence runs an undercurrent neither of them names. The narrator is aware of it in the way he chooses his words carefully, trimming anything too revealing before it can slip out. She asks about his work, and he answers honestly but briefly. He's learned how to do that, how to be open without being exposed. When he turns the question back to her, she speaks with a calm assurance that comes from knowing who she is now. There's pride in her voice, not the loud kind, but the quiet kind that settles into a person over time. He notices how she doesn't rush her sentences. She lets silence breathe, as if she's no longer afraid of it. They sit across from each other at the small table by the window. Outside, the street moves at its own pace. Cars passing, people walking by, lives intersecting and drifting apart. Inside, the world feels narrowed to this space. Their cups sit between them, untouched for moments at a time, steam curling upward and disappearing. He becomes acutely aware of proximity. Their knees are close enough that a small shift would bring them into contact. He adjusts in his chair, not to move away, but to steady himself. She mirrors the movement unconsciously, their body language falling into an old rhythm neither of them planned to revisit. When she laughs, soft, genuine, it catches him off guard. He smiles before he can stop himself, the kind that reaches his eyes. For a brief second, it feels natural. Then the awareness returns, and he reins it in, lowering his gaze to his cup. He wonders if she notices the restraint. He suspects she does. She studies him in small, careful ways. The way his jaw tightens when certain topics come up. The way his hands rest flat on the table, grounded, as if reminding himself where he is. Her gaze isn't intrusive. It's curious, almost protective, as though she's trying to understand not who he used to be, but who he's become. There are pauses in the conversation that stretch longer than expected. Not awkward ones, thoughtful ones. In those moments, the air seems to thicken slightly, charged with unspoken memory. He feels the pull of it, the urge to fill the silence with something lighter, something safer. Instead, he lets it sit. He's learned that silence doesn't always demand an answer. At one point, she reaches for her cup and their fingers brush accidentally. The contact is brief, barely there, but it sends a quiet jolt through him. She stills for a fraction of a second, then continues as if nothing happened. He does the same, though his pulse has quickened. It becomes clear to him then, this isn't just catching up. It's a careful dance. Two people circling what they were, testing what remains without crossing any lines. The small talk isn't small at all. It's a way of measuring distance, of seeing whether closeness still feels dangerous or simply familiar. And as he listens to her speak, he realizes how much intention it takes to stay guarded. Caring may still exist, but he's learned the cost of letting it show too freely. They've settled into an easy rhythm, one built on shared history and careful restraint. The narrator is mid-sentence, finishing a thought about something trivial, an old routine, a familiar place, when he notices the way her attention sharpens. She isn't just listening anymore. She's waiting. She leans back slightly in her chair, creating a small but deliberate distance, as if giving herself room to speak honestly. One hand rests on the table, fingers relaxed, the other curled loosely around her cup. Her gaze stays on him, steady and unguarded. There's no tension in her face, no expectation she's trying to impose, just quiet certainty. You still care. She says it softly, not as a challenge, not even as a question. More like a realization spoken out loud. The words settle between them, heavier than anything that's been said so far. He doesn't respond right away. Instead, he feels his body react before his mind catches up. His shoulders tense slightly. His breath slows. He becomes aware of the room again, the low hum of conversation nearby, the muted clatter of dishes behind the counter. All of it feels distant, as if the moment has pulled them into a space that belongs only to the two of them. He looks down at the table, tracing the grain of the wood with his eyes. It's an old habit, something he does when he needs to buy himself time. He considers deflecting, turning it into a joke, offering a neutral answer that keeps everything intact. It would be easy. He's practiced at easy. But something about the way she said it stops him. She isn't asking him to explain himself. She isn't asking for reassurance or confession. She's simply naming what she sees. There's no urgency in her posture, no lean forward, no reach across the table. She lets the silence stretch, trusting him to fill it or not. He finally looks back up. Their eyes meet, and for a brief second, he feels exposed in a way he hasn't in a long time. Not because she knows everything, but because she knows enough. Enough to see past the surface calm he's learned to maintain. Enough to sense the care he's carefully contained. He realizes then how much effort it's taken to carry that care quietly, to keep it from spilling into longing, from turning into something that could hurt him again. Caring, he's learned, isn't dangerous on its own. It's what follows when you stop protecting yourself that leaves scars. She shifts slightly in her seat, a small movement that signals patience rather than pressure. Her expression softens, not in triumph, but in understanding. If there's hope there, it's tempered. If there's vulnerability, it's measured. The silence stretches longer than either of them expected. In that space, memories surface uninvited. Not dramatic, not painful, just real. Shared glances, conversations that once ran late into the night. The feeling of being seen. He doesn't push them away, but he doesn't lean into them either. When he inhales, it's slow and deliberate. He understands now that this moment is a turning point. How he answers, or whether he answers at all, will set the tone for everything that comes next. He can't pretend indifference without lying, but he can choose how much truth to offer. And as he holds her gaze, he knows one thing for certain. Whatever he says next won't be about the past. It will be about the boundaries he's learned to draw to survive it. The moment arrives with the quiet inevitability of a setting sun. After she has spoken, after her words, "You still care," hang in the air, the narrator feels a tight knot in his chest. He knows this is the point where honesty and self-preservation intersect. He's been here before in different ways. The delicate balance between expressing emotion and guarding his own heart. Now, decades of experience, of living through loss, miscommunication, and regret, press him to respond with precision, not impulse. He takes a slow breath, letting the weight of her observation settle. The cafe around them fades into soft blurs of motion. The barista pulling espresso shots, the occasional chime of the door as someone leaves, the muted music in the background. All of it recedes until the only thing that matters is the table between them, the space their knees almost touch, and the vulnerability in her eyes. "I don't care enough to get hurt again," he says quietly, each word deliberate. The tone isn't bitter, isn't resentful. It's steady, calm, a statement of truth rather than a shield. He watches her reaction carefully, knowing it will reveal as much about her as it does about him. Her response isn't immediate. Instead, she tilts her head slightly, processing. There's a faint catch in her breath, almost imperceptible, like the moment the air changes before a storm. She doesn't recoil and she doesn't push. She simply absorbs the statement, letting the weight of it rest where it belongs. Her hands shift slightly on the table, brushing against the rim of her cup. The gesture is small, almost unconscious, but it communicates the tension and recognition of shared history. He notices how her eyes linger on him, not with accusation, but with understanding. She reaches out instinctively, fingers hovering over the space between them, then withdraws halfway, letting her hand fall back into her lap. That small act tells him she feels it too, the delicate boundary that separates past intimacy from present caution. It is a quiet acknowledgement, a subtle but profound communication without words. The narrator feels a mix of relief and quiet sorrow. Relief because he has maintained his boundary. Sorrow because he knows this moment is irrevocable in a sense, cannot be undone, and it cannot be softened. Whatever warmth remains between them is tempered now by this truth. It is real and it is final in its own way, even if the care beneath it still exists. They sit in silence for a moment longer. He watches her breathe, noticing the slight rise and fall of her shoulders. Her gaze drifts briefly to the window, tracing the muted patterns of passing life outside, before returning to him. There is no bitterness, no frustration, only recognition that they occupy the same space, emotionally close yet carefully measured. For the narrator, the clarity is grounding. He has spoken the words that protect him. He has drawn the line that separates care from risk. And though there is a lingering ache in that honesty, there is also freedom, a quiet empowerment in knowing he can care and yet remain whole. This moment marks a turning point. It is the first time since their separation that he has spoken plainly, without evasion, without softening for comfort. And in the quiet aftermath, he senses that both of them understand what has been set in motion. A delicate balance between connection and self-preservation, one that will define the path they walk together or apart from here on. After the line is drawn, the atmosphere shifts. The cafe feels smaller, more intimate, as if the walls have absorbed the tension between them. The narrator notices every subtle movement. The way she adjusts the sleeve of her sweater, the slight tapping of her fingers against the ceramic cup, the way her eyes meet his briefly before looking away. There is no anger, no recrimination. Only a quiet, mutual understanding that it's time to confront the truth of their shared past. He begins tentatively, recounting his memories without accusation, tracing the points where they drifted apart. Missed opportunities, misunderstandings, the silent pauses where neither spoke their true feelings. He chooses words carefully, aiming for clarity and honesty rather than blame. He notices how her gaze softens when he admits his own hesitations, his own fears, the moments he wishes he had acted differently. She listens, fully present, leaning forward just slightly, as if to catch every word, every nuance. When she speaks, it is with the same measured calm. She acknowledges her own failings, times she let pride or doubt dictate her actions, moments where she failed to bridge the distance between them. Her voice carries a gentle strength, an honesty that doesn't demand forgiveness but invites understanding. The conversation is not easy. It surfaces memories that are bittersweet. Long walks in the park, shared coffee in quiet mornings, laughter that once felt infinite. Yet the discussion never slips into nostalgia alone. It is a careful excavation of emotion, a navigation through the what-ifs without becoming trapped in them. They share pauses that speak louder than words. When she places her hand lightly on the table, fingers grazing his, he feels the residual warmth of familiarity, of intimacy that was never fully severed. The touch is brief, conscious, yet tender, a reminder that connection endures even when circumstances fracture it. He doesn't pull away. He allows the small gesture to exist, acknowledging its presence without letting it dictate his heart. As they talk, a profound realization settles between them. What went wrong was never a single event. It was a combination of timing, fear, and the unspoken walls they built to protect themselves. There is a sense of quiet mourning, not for the love they had, but for the distance they allowed to grow. Both recognize the complexity of human emotion, that love can exist alongside hesitation, that care can coexist with self-preservation. Through this mutual honesty, the air begins to lighten. He notices her smile returning, subtle but genuine, as she recounts a memory from their past with warmth rather than regret. He finds himself smiling too, an involuntary response to the shared understanding, the acknowledgement that they once mattered deeply and that matching still resonates. By the end of the conversation, they are closer, not in a romantic sense, but in emotional clarity. The tension has not disappeared entirely, but it has shifted from uncertainty to awareness. They have confronted what went wrong without blame, leaving behind only the truths they each need to carry. In that quiet space, a foundation forms, one built on honesty, mutual respect, and the acknowledgement that caring for someone does not always require proximity, and sometimes the most profound love is one tempered by patience and understanding. This part becomes a turning point. For the first time, they see each other not as mistakes or mischances, but as fully realized individuals who shared a meaningful connection and are learning to honor it without repeating the past. The air between them feels charged, but it's no longer tense. It's deliberate, measured. After laying bare the truths of what went wrong, they step into the delicate territory of possibility. Both know this is the point where intention matters more than words alone. A single gesture, a glance, or even a pause can shift the trajectory of everything that remains between them. They decide to take a walk outside, leaving the cafe and its ambient hum behind. The evening air is cool, crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain on pavement. Streetlights glow warmly, painting their shadows on the sidewalk. Their steps fall into a quiet rhythm, neither rushing nor lagging behind. There's space between them, but not distance, an unspoken balance of respect and curiosity. She speaks first, softly, almost as if testing her own courage. I wondered if time could fix what we couldn't before. There's no accusation in her voice, no expectation. It's a confession, fragile yet clear. He listens, feeling the subtle weight of her vulnerability. His chest tightens, not with longing, but with recognition. He remembers how he once wanted to offer everything without hesitation, before the lessons of loss tempered him. He responds with honesty, steady and calm. I never stopped caring, but learning to protect myself. It changed how I move through life now. His words are measured, not cold. They carry the weight of experience and the quiet wisdom of someone who has loved deeply and learned how to navigate that care safely. He watches her reaction closely, Her eyes soften, and she tilts her head slightly, a gesture that acknowledges the truth without needing further explanation. There is a pause, pregnant with meaning. In that silence, they sense the possibilities and the limitations. They could step closer and test the boundaries. Or they could honor the progress they've made, embracing the connection without forcing it into old patterns. The choice is theirs, and the clarity of choice is what matters most. Then comes a subtle gesture. She reaches for his hand, brushing it lightly, deliberately, before withdrawing to rest by her side. It is neither a plea nor a surrender, it is acknowledgement. He mirrors her gesture subtly, not crossing the line, but meeting it halfway. In this small, careful contact, there is communication that words cannot capture. Respect, understanding, and a tentative bridge towards something shared yet safely held. As they walk, conversation drifts to lighter topics. Small stories, observations about the night, memories that bring a smile without nostalgia weighing it down. Laughter emerges, soft but genuine, mingling with the rhythmic sounds of their steps. The world feels slightly more intimate, shaped by shared history and the deliberate care with which they move forward. At the corner where their paths diverge, she stops. There's a long, steady look, a silent conversation that needs no words. Then she hugs him, the slow, steady, grounding. He holds her just as carefully, mindful of the space they both inhabit. It's a hug that says everything. Recognition of past feelings, acknowledgement of present care, and respect for boundaries that protect both hearts. When they pull apart, they do so with a quiet understanding. The choice has been made not to erase the past, not to force a future, but to honor the connection they share in the present. For both, it's a profound relief. They have acknowledged the depth of their bond, expressed their care without compromising themselves, and left room for life to continue. Together, cautiously, yet openly. This moment marks the emotional climax of the story. Clarity, honesty, and the first conscious step toward reconciliation, whether romantic or simply human, without losing oneself in the process. The night has grown deeper, but the air feels lighter. After the walk, after the honesty, and after the careful gestures that spoke volumes, the moment of parting arrives. It carries no drama, no grand gestures, only the quiet weight of shared history and the gentle acknowledgement of what remains between them. They stop at the corner where their paths must diverge. Streetlights cast pools of warm gold across the pavement, illuminating the subtle shifts in their expressions. She looks at him with an intensity softened by understanding, not longing. He meets her gaze steadily, noting how much is said in the silence. The care that still lingers, the memories that remain vivid, and the lessons both have learned from their time apart. He senses the temptation to prolong the moment, to step closer, to bridge the gap one last time. But experience has taught him that true care does not always demand presence. Sometimes, it is the restraint, the act of letting go while holding respect, that carries the deepest meaning. He breathes slowly, letting the realization settle in. They can part without diminishing the bond, without losing the warmth that once defined them. She leans in for a hug. It is slow, deliberate, and grounding. Her hands rest lightly on his shoulders, steadying herself, while his arms circle her in quiet acknowledgement. The hug lasts long enough to convey the history and emotion they share, but short enough to preserve the boundaries they've established. Neither speaks. Words are unnecessary here. The contact alone communicates care, closure, and understanding all at once. As they pull away, their eyes linger. There is a faint smile on her lips, subtle yet genuine. His own expression mirrors hers. Not in joy, not in sadness, but in acceptance. They have reached the end of this shared path for now, not with bitterness, not with regret, but with a sense of completion. The past is acknowledged, the present honored, and the future left open without pressure or expectation. He begins to step away, walking slowly down the street. Each step feels deliberate, measured, as though imprinting the memory of this reunion into his body as much as his mind. The cool night air brushes against his face, carrying the scent of rain and distant trees. He allows himself a private moment of reflection. The care he felt, the boundaries he respected, the shared acknowledgement of love that is no longer tethered to attachment. Behind him, she watches until he disappears from sight. She stands in the glow of the streetlight for a moment longer, breathing in the quiet of the evening, then turns to continue her own path. Neither hurries, neither glances back. The parting is mutual, graceful, and filled with a sense of emotional equilibrium. This is a farewell that transforms rather than diminishes. It is a letting go without loss, a recognition that connection does not require constant presence. They carry the bond forward silently, as an invisible thread woven into the fabric of their lives, stronger, wiser, and tenderly preserved. For the narrator, the realization is profound. Caring does not always mean closeness, and letting go does not mean forgetting. Some bonds endure precisely because they are honored rather than clung to. As he continues down the quiet street, he feels the weight in his chest lift slightly, replaced by clarity and peace.